What's up, guys? Welcome to another video. Today we'll be reviewing The Black Phone. This film came out today and was directed by Scott Derrickson and stars Ethan Hawke as the Grabber. Now, before we start with the like button, subscribe to the post notification bell so you know for a video. Let's just start. So let's get started with talking about the good. So all the actors and actresses in the film, I thought they're all fantastic, especially Ethan Hawke as the Grabber. This is one of my favorite Ethan Hawke performances that I've ever seen. Mason Thames as Finney, he is very, very good, and Madeline McGraw as Gwen, she is very, very good as well. I thought those three actors and actresses were fantastic in this entire film. The opening sequence, I thought it was good. You basically meet Finney, you meet Gwen, and you meet this kid named Bruce, who he is the baseball kid. He's playing baseball against Finney. Now, he gets kidnapped by the Grabber in that opening sequence. He gets kidnapped, he's put in the Grabber's white van, and I thought it was a very good opening sequence. It was good, it was tense, it was creepy in a way because the Grabber was standing there with black balloons waiting for the kid, and the kid went to the car, and of course he got taken away, and it was a very, very creepy opening sequence. The cinematography, which includes shots of camera angles, the lighting, very, very well done. I really loved how this film looked. The first act of the film, I thought it was good. It sets up the characters well, and I think that all the characters that it set up were entertaining, likable, or not supposed to be likable, but on purpose. Of course, the Grabber's not supposed to be likable, and the father is not supposed to be likable until you get to the end, which I'll talk about later. There's also a great brother-sister relationship in this film. Finney and Gwen, they are fantastic. They have a great relationship between each other, and you can tell that they are actually brother and sisters. They also do get abused by their father, who's played by Jeremy Davies. There's one sequence where the father ends up hitting Gwen, and it's very tense. Finney does step in and protects his sister, and I thought it just expanded that dynamic that those two characters have between each other. There's also a great sequence where the Grabber kidnaps Finney, and it's very tense and very creepy. Now, Finney is the main character. He does not die in that sequence, but he does get taken to where the Grabber sort of lives and takes his victims. The second half of the film I thought was very well done. It was not boring at all, still constantly entertaining. It continued the story very well, and a lot of things get revealed in the second act of the film about what's really happening with the Grabber. There's also a creepy and sad scene. It reminded me of Sinister a lot, and the way it reminded me because it was sort of shot to look like old film, just like the films in Sinister, and it's basically Bruce, who is one of the Grabber's victims, who is the baseball kid. It shows his backstory, and it shows it through old film, and I thought it worked very, very well because, yes, this does take place in the 70s, I believe, 60s, 70s, somewhere around there, and the old film just enhances the creepiness of that sequence. The story, I thought the overall story for this film was great. I really liked this story more than Sinister story. I thought this story had a lot to do, and it wasn't. Sinister's story wasn't straightforward, but once you got sort of the gist of it, then you sort of already kind of knew what was going to happen, but at the same time you didn't. That's why Sinister is a very, very terrifying film, and one of the scariest films I've ever seen, and the story just enhances that experience. But this story in The Black Phone is phenomenal. I did not know where they're going to go with the story, but once they went there in that third act, which I'll get to later, it was fantastic. There are also some great reveals in the story where that all the kidnapped kids were killed by the Grabber. So the Grabber killed all those kidnapped kids. Bruce does help Finney throughout most of the second act. So Bruce, in his sort of dead form, because Bruce is killed by the Grabber, and it doesn't show how the Grabber kills Bruce, but later on you do see Bruce as sort of a kid with marks on his face, which there are a lot of kids in there with marks on their faces, and you see him like that, so obviously it means that he's obviously dead. There are also some many tense and terrifying sequences. There are fights at school, and those sequences are more tense than I thought. It was very brutal. The fight sequence was very, very brutal, and I really enjoyed that about the film. It doesn't shy away from the brutality of the Grabber, and of course of the other bullies of the school. And nearly every scene with the grabber is horrifying. I found Ethan Hawke to be phenomenal as a grabber, and he is terrifying. Every single mask, and he has multiple masks in this film, changing masks constantly throughout the film, and each of them are creepy in their own unique way. There are also some fantastic jump scares, very similar to Sinister, and most of the jump scares got me. Jump scares in horror films, most of them do make me sort of jump, but not scare me in a way that Sinister does. Sinister had great jump scares, but the whole point of the jump scares were to actually creep out the viewer, and the jump scares were terrifying as Sinister, and it is the same thing in the Black Phone. These jump scares, they make you sort of put on the edge of your seat, but also terrified of what's going to happen next, and that happened to me constantly throughout the entire film. There are also some hilarious sequences, especially with Gwen cursing at the investigators, and the investigators with Max, who's played by James Ransone, and James Ransone, fantastic in this film. He returns in another Scott Derrickson film, and I thought he was great. The third act of the film I thought was fantastic. One of the most entertaining third acts of a horror film this year is basically Finney versus the Grabber. This is the entire third act. Finney fighting off the Grabber, and I thought it worked well because he does use the Black Phone to attack the Grabber. He listens to the dead kids that tell him to, especially Bruce. Bruce tells him to fill the phone with this sort of sand-like texture, and he does. He attacks the Grabber. Very vicious fight, and I thought it worked very, very well because it shows a brutality, more brutality in this film. The ending sequence, I thought it was great. Finney is now popular because he is being called the kid who killed the Grabber, and of course everyone in the town knew about the Grabber, but he is now the kid who killed the Grabber, and I thought it was a very, very good ending sequence. That's about it. I did not find anything bad about this film. The Black Phone is a fantastic horror film. It's definitely on the level of Sinister, and I highly recommend it. And I'm going to give The Black Phone an A. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to post notification bells so you know for every video. I'm Peter. Thank you for watching.